The first time someone told me I already belonged to a man, I wasn't even a day old. I didn't take my first breath before my Uncle Richard wrote my name down in the family ledger and announced I was his future wife. I grew up believing that was normal. That every little girl had a husband assigned at birth. That men got to secure the bloodline while we girls waited for our training to begin. It sounds insane now, but back then, it was just life. Every Sunday from the time I turned 12, Uncle Richard would pick me up in his grey sedan. His voice was calm, polite, almost gentle, but his rules were brutal. He taught me how to serve whiskey at the exact right temperature, how to fold his shirts without leaving creases, how to sit with my knees together and my hands on my lap. If I messed up, I was punished. Sometimes I had to stand in the corner holding stacks of books until my arms trembled. Sometimes it was worse. "How will you ever be a good wife," he'd ask, "if you can't even follow simple instructions?" At the time, I thought he was preparing me for some sacred role. Now, I realize he was just conditioning me. My cousin Laura was the first one I watched go through the commitment ceremony. She was 16. Her uncle, Charles, was 53, with 2 dead wives already. Laura wore lace and pearls, her makeup smudged from crying. Everyone said she was just nervous, just like any other bride. But I saw her throw up twice before the vows. I saw her parents counting the envelope of cash they'd been handed as a thank you for raising her. 3 months later, Laura was dead. The official story was kidney failure, but the whispers in the kitchen told the truth: too many pregnancies, too young. At her funeral, Uncle Charles lit a cigar and joked with my father about which girl he'd claim next. "They last longer if you get them younger," he said. I didn't even flinch when I heard it. I'd been taught not to react. Not to think. Just to prepare. But then there was my cousin Emma. Emma was different. She was 10 when she started asking dangerous questions. "Why can't I pick my own husband? What if I don't want to marry at all?" She'd sneak library books into family gatherings, books about women's rights, hidden under her skirt. The men noticed. The women noticed. Emma was pulled out of school. Uncle Anthony began taking her to his cabin every weekend for what he called extended training. When she came back, her arms were covered in bruises. Her mom slapped her when she tried to show me, whispering, "Good wives don't complain." That phrase burned itself into my head. Good wives don't complain. I was 15 the day Emma disappeared completely. Uncle Anthony said she was being difficult and needed more time at the cabin. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Then 6. My family insisted she was visiting relatives in another state. But the truth came out when her old teacher, Mrs. Daniels, knocked on our front door. She'd reported Emma missing. And that's when the FBI found her. Emma had been locked in a dog crate in the basement of Uncle Anthony's cabin. She weighed barely 70 pounds. Her fingernails were torn off from clawing at the bars. She had infected wounds from trying to escape. She hadn't seen sunlight in weeks. Within hours, the FBI raided our family's registry, a 500-year-old collection of records showing which uncles had claimed which nieces as wives. There were photos of ceremonies, death certificates for girls who never made it past 25, proof that this wasn't just a few bad men. It was all of them. 17 family members were arrested that day, including Uncle Richard. When they put him in handcuffs, he lunged for me, screaming that I was his property, that he had the papers to prove it. I thought it was finally over. That the nightmare was finished. That the girls were free. But I was wrong. So wrong. Because 3 weeks later, I got a call from the prosecutor. Her voice was shaking when she said the words that made my blood run cold. The judge just threw out the charges. Insufficient evidence. They're being released tomorrow. Tomorrow. All 17 of them. Including Uncle Richard. And he still believed I belonged to him. That wasn't the worst of it. Not even close. The night after that phone call, I sat in the kitchen staring at my hands. They wouldn't stop shaking. My mom came in, calm as ever, and poured herself tea. She moved like she always did, precise, controlled, every gesture taught to me since I could walk. "They're coming home," I whispered. She didn't look at me. She just set her cup down with a soft clink, pulled back the curtains, and gazed out at the quiet suburban street. Families were grilling dinner, kids were riding bikes, everything looked so normal. My mom didn't even blink. "They are family," she said finally. "You will treat them with respect." Respect. That word felt like a knife. The doorbell rang an hour later. My heart nearly stopped. Uncle Richard stood there, still wearing the clothes he'd been arrested in 3 weeks earlier. His eyes found mine instantly through the screen door. And then, he smiled. The same patient smile he always wore during my Sunday training sessions. Mom bowed low and opened the door wide. My instinct screamed to run, but she grabbed my wrist and pulled me forward. Uncle Richard stepped inside like he'd never been gone, removed his shoes, and placed them neatly by the door. My dad came out of his study and embraced him. They sat together on the couch while my mom served them tea. Laughter filled the room. Jokes, casual conversation, like nothing had happened. Like Emma hadn't been pulled out of a dog crate half-starved. "Come sit," Uncle Richard said, patting the space beside him. That was the same spot where he'd made me practice sitting properly for years, back straight, ankles tucked. My stomach churned. I bolted upstairs instead. My bedroom door didn't have a lock. I'd never questioned that before. I shoved my dresser against it and sat on the bed, listening to their voices downstairs. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. It was Emma. She was still in the hospital. She asked if I was safe. I typed back with trembling fingers, "He's here. He's in my house." She paused for a long time, the typing bubbles flashing on and off. Finally. "Get out. Now." But where could I go? The outside world was something my parents had trained me to fear since birth. Americans are soft, my mom always said. They don't understand the old ways. They corrupt everything. A knock came at my door. Soft. Patient. His voice followed, gentle as always. "Open up, sweetheart. We need to talk about the wedding shoes. I still have them in the car. Size 6. They'll fit you now." The dresser scraped against the floor as he tested the door. I panicked. I shoved my window open and climbed onto the roof. My cousin Laura had shown me this escape route years earlier, before her own ceremony. She'd whispered she was going to run away. 2 weeks later, she was in the hospital. 3 months later, she was gone. I froze when I saw the porch light next door click on. Mrs. Chen, our neighbor, stepped out with her recycling bin. She looked right at me, standing barefoot on the roof, my eyes wide with terror. We locked eyes. For a moment I thought she'd help. But she didn't. She set the bin down, turned, and went back inside. I climbed down anyway. No shoes, no coat. Just my phone and the clothes on my back. The streets were empty. Normal houses with families inside watching TV or making dinner, while I was running for my life. 3 blocks away, I called Mrs. Daniels, Emma's old teacher. She answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. "Come to me," she said. She gave me an address. "Hurry." I ran faster, my socks soaking through from the wet pavement. When I reached the building, she was already at the entrance. She wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and pulled me inside. Her apartment was small, filled with stacks of books and papers. On her coffee table was a thick folder labeled with my family's name. She'd been investigating us for years. She showed me photos, documents, patterns spanning decades. Girls who died young. Girls who disappeared. Commitment ceremonies with men 3 times their age. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Emma. It was hundreds of us. Then she rolled up her sleeve. And I saw it. The scar. A thin mark across her wrist. The same scar all the claimed wives had after their ceremonies. She had been one of us. She'd escaped 30 years ago, changed her name, built a life as a teacher so she could watch for girls like me. She had saved 12. Emma was number 13. I could be 14. If I wanted to. That night I slept on her couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like lavender detergent instead of cigar smoke and whiskey. But even there, safe for the first time in my life, I couldn't stop shaking. Because I knew the truth. Uncle Richard wouldn't stop. He would never stop. And the family always found their girls. I wish I could tell you that staying with Mrs. Daniels meant I finally felt safe. But the truth is, my nightmares followed me everywhere. That first night on her couch, I dreamed of Laura. She was wearing her white lace dress, standing at the altar with Uncle Charles. Her lips moved like she was reciting vows, but when I looked closer, I saw blood seeping through the lace, spreading down her gown. I tried to scream, but the sound stuck in my throat. And then her eyes locked on mine. "You'll be next." I woke up gasping, the blanket tangled around me like a trap. Mrs. Daniels handed me tea the next morning. She didn't ask me what I'd dreamed. She didn't need to. "I know what it's like," she said softly, rolling up her sleeve again to show me the scar. "They branded us too. That's how they marked ownership." Her words hit me like a memory I'd buried long ago. I was 7 the first time I saw that scar. Not on Mrs. Daniels, but on my aunt. Aunt Linda. She had been claimed when she was a baby, just like me. Married at 14. By 21, she was already frail, her body broken from too many pregnancies. She wore long sleeves even in summer, but one day, I caught a glimpse of the thin, puckered line on her wrist. "What's that?" I asked. She yanked her sleeve down and smiled too quickly. "It's nothing, sweetheart." But her eye said otherwise. She died a year later. Complications, they said. But I knew better. And now I realized they all had it. Every aunt. Every cousin who'd gone through the ceremonies. The scar was the family's signature. Mrs. Daniels placed a folder in front of me, thick with papers. She flipped through pages of names, dates, photographs. Generations of girls claimed and married off before they even finished middle school. Why didn't anyone stop it? I whispered. Her expression hardened. Some tried. But the family has money, lawyers, connections. Courts don't always listen when it's hidden behind tradition. I thought of the judge who released all 17 men just weeks earlier. Of Uncle Richard smiling through the screen door like nothing had happened. "They'll come for you," she said simply. "They always come back for the ones who run." Her words echoed in my head for days. I kept replaying the moment on the roof, when Mrs. Chen saw me. My neighbor for 10 years. She must have heard things through the walls, the shouting, the crying, maybe even the training sessions. She looked me in the eyes that night, saw me barefoot, shaking, begging silently for help. And she went back inside. I don't know what hurt worse, my uncle's claim on me, or the world's silence about it. But silence had always been the family shield. 2 weeks into hiding, I tested my phone for the first time. I needed, to hear from Emma. The hospital had discharged her, and her parents had taken her back home. She texted me late at night, terrified. "They're starting my training again. Worse this time." I told her about Mrs. Daniels' safe house, about the network of women who had escaped, about how she could join me if she just held on. She didn't respond. I sat there staring at the screen, waiting, praying. Hours passed. Nothing. That night, Mrs. Daniels showed me a hidden message board she and other survivors used. Anonymous posts from girls like me, detailing punishments, escape attempts, failures, and rare victories. Some posts were frantic, begging for advice, terrified they'd been caught. Others were calm, almost numb, documenting step by step how their uncles controlled them. One post stopped me cold. It was from a girl my age. She wrote, "I thought I'd run away. But I didn't. I just traded one cage for another. I couldn't shake it. Was I free? Or just hiding in a different kind of cage?" That question haunted me. Then one night, the answer came banging on the door. 3 sharp knocks. Not police. Not neighbors. Family. The sound of those knocks froze me where I sat today. 3 sharp, deliberate raps on the door. Not frantic like a neighbor. Not polite like a stranger. It was the kind of knock that said, "We already know you're inside." Mrs. Daniels went rigid. She motioned for me to stay quiet and crept toward the peephole. Her face paled. "They found us," she whispered. My chest tightened. Outside, I could hear voices. Calm. Familiar. My father's. My Uncle Richard's. And at least 2 others. "Open up," my dad called, his voice smooth, controlled, like he was negotiating a business deal. "We just want to talk." Mrs. Daniels didn't move. She picked up her phone and started dialing, but I grabbed her arm. "They'll hear you," I mouthed. The doorknob rattled. Slowly at first, then harder. "Sweetheart," Uncle Richard's voice came through, low and coaxing, the same tone he used when he made me pour his whiskey at the perfect angle. "Come home. You don't belong here. You know that." Every muscle in my body screamed to hide, but there was nowhere left to run. Mrs. Daniels put her finger to her lips and led me down the hall, pulling me into a tiny storage closet. We crouched there in the dark as she locked the door from the inside. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure they could hear it through the walls. Then came the sound I'll never forget: keys. Metal scraping against the front door. "They have a key," I whispered. Mrs. Daniels clenched her jaw. "Of course they do. They always do." The lock clicked. The front door swung open. Footsteps. Heavy. Purposeful. They were in the apartment. "Check the rooms," my dad said casually, as though this was just another family gathering. Drawers opened. Closet doors slammed. They were searching. I held my breath until my lungs burned. The footsteps grew closer. One of them stopped outside our hiding place. The doorknob turned. "Please, God," I thought. "Please let the lock hold." A pause. Then Richard's voice, inches away. "I know you're in there. Don't make me force it." He knocked, once, softly. Almost patient. The way he used to knock at my bedroom door. Mrs. Daniels gripped my hand so tight I thought my bones would snap. She leaned toward my ear and whispered, "When I say run, you run." I nodded, tears streaming silently down my face. Suddenly, the sound of sirens cut through the night. Louder, closer, fast. Red and blue lights flashed through the cracks in the blinds. The footsteps retreated. A door slammed. Then silence. We stayed frozen in that closet for what felt like hours, but it was probably only minutes. When we finally emerged, the apartment was empty, except for the papers they'd left scattered across the coffee table. Documents. Photos. My school ID. Printouts of Mrs. Daniels' emails. Proof they'd been watching us. Tracking us. "This isn't a warning," Mrs. Daniels said, her voice shaking. "This is a message." And she was right. They weren't going to stop until they dragged me back. That night, Mrs. Daniels packed everything into boxes. Files, photos, evidence. She explained that we couldn't stay here anymore, the safe house was compromised. She'd known this day would come, but she hadn't expected it so soon. "From now on," she said, handing me a burner phone, "we move constantly. Different houses. Different towns. You'll never be in one place for long." That's the only way to stay ahead. It was like losing the ground beneath my feet. No roots. No stability. No home. But the worst part wasn't leaving. The worst part was the realization that Uncle Richard had been inches away from me. Inches. And he'd almost won. I thought I understood fear before that night. I thought I'd already lived through the worst of it. But I hadn't. Not even close. After that night, I stopped thinking of myself as a runaway. I wasn't just hiding. I was surviving a war my family had declared on me before I could even crawl. Mrs. Daniels moved me to another safe house 2 towns over, a small place owned by a woman named Rachel who had escaped her own family decades ago. Rachel had the same scar on her wrist. She showed it to me the first night, like proof of survival. "You'll never forget it," she said, tracing the faded line with her finger. "But one day, you'll stop being afraid of it." I wanted to believe her. But the fear was still there, every time a car slowed near the house, every time a shadow passed the window. I jumped at the sound of my phone buzzing, terrified it would be them again. And yet, there was something else inside me too. Anger. For years, I'd been trained to be silent. To serve drinks, fold shirts, smile while dying inside. But Emma's face in that hospital bed wouldn't leave me. Laura's blood-stained wedding dress haunted me. And my own uncle's voice, patient, gentle, deadly, still whispered in my ears every night. I couldn't just hide. Not forever. One evening, Rachel spread Mrs. Daniels' files across the kitchen table. Birth records. Marriage certificates. Death reports. Hundreds of them. "They call it tradition," Rachel said bitterly. "But it's a machine. A machine that eats girls alive." I picked up a photo of myself as a baby, the day Uncle Richard claimed me. His hand on my crib, smiling for the camera like it was a happy memory. Something inside me snapped. "I don't belong to him," I whispered. "I never did." Rachel looked at me, her eyes soft but steady. "Then you have to decide. Do you keep running? Or do you start fighting?" The words hit me harder than any punishment my family had ever given. Because deep down, I already knew my answer. That night, I wrote my first letter. Not to my parents. Not to my uncle. But to the other girls. I wrote, "You are not property. You are not a bloodline. You are not theirs." Rachel promised she would get it into the right hands, other safe houses, other survivors, girls still trapped who needed to know there was a way out. It was a small act. Just words on paper. But for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. I wish I could say the story ended there, that the family gave up, that the scars faded, that the nightmares stopped. But that's not how this works. They still search. They still whisper. They still believe I'm theirs. And maybe they always will. But I know something now that I didn't before. They can chase me. They can threaten me. They can even try to break me. But they will never own me again. And if they want to test that, I'll be ready.